Hostage negotiations are a delicate test in diplomacy and are handled at the highest levels of American government as the Biden administration recently clarified its stance on this issue. But the question is, does this come in time for the release of several high-profile hostages held overseas?
We have VOA's Anita Powell with the report.
The White House faces constant pressure from more than 60 American families whose relatives are held hostage overseas, including one whose family is marking 10 years without him. Austin Tice has been missing in Syria since August 2012. He's been missing longer than any other American journalist. Syria's government denies holding him, which the State Department refutes. State Department spokesman Ned Price.
We believe to this very day that Syria still has the power to release Austin Tice. That is why we are calling on the Syrian regime to do just that.
But hostage situations are rarely straightforward and often escalate to the highest levels of government. Earlier this year, President Joe Biden's administration oversaw a prisoner swap for the release of Trevor Reed, a former Marine held since 2019 in Russia. Last month, after basketball star Brittany Griner appeared in a Russian court on drug charges, the administration refined its hostage policy, allowing agencies to impose sanctions and visa bans on both state and non-state actors who are holding Americans. Those campaigning to free Tice welcomed these changes and are calling on Biden to act. The leader of the campaign told VOA that the Syrian government, in a 2020 meeting with U.S. officials, indicated they are seeking a reduction in U.S. troops in Syria, sanctions relief, and limited diplomatic engagement in Washington and Damascus. Bill McCarran heads the Free Austin Tice campaign and also leads the National Press Club of Washington, D.C. He spoke to VOA on Zoom.
And now what needs to happen is an offer needs to be put on the table, and it is the United States that needs to do that. That is where the ball is right now.
But those who have worked in the West Wing say patience is essential. Philip Bobbitt, now a law professor, was working at the White House on January 20th, 1981, as President Ronald Reagan was being sworn in and Iran's supreme leader released 52 U.S. hostages after 444 days.
The president has to have confidence in his negotiators. If he tries to jiggle their elbow to get the hostages back with more dramatic threats or with more dramatic concessions, he'll really, even if he succeeds in the instant case, make things more difficult for the United States when hostages are taken again in the future. So he has to find negotiators in whom he has confidence, give them a charter, and keep steadily to that.
But for families, this process can be excruciating and can still fail. Diane Foley learned that 8 years ago this week. Her son James, a journalist, had been kidnapped 9 months earlier in Syria by a militia group loyal to Syria's president. On August 19th, the captors released a chilling video showing Foley. He'd been decapitated. Foley's mother said she welcomed the changes that have been made since. She spoke to VOA as she prepared to travel to Virginia for the sentencing of one of the men convicted in her son's kidnapping and murder.
There's definitely been progress, Anita. I really feel there is. In 2015, the Hostage Recovery Fusion Cell was created, the Special Envoy, and the whole hostage enterprise. When Jim was in captivity, there was no such thing. So at least we have people accountable for the return of Americans. So there's definitely a heightened awareness at the highest levels of our government.
McCarran argues that the Foley family's path to justice shows that the U.S. government isn't playing a zero-sum game.
This is not a question of you can either get the hostage out or you can hold the person accountable by justice. You can do both things. You can do both things. And that's what I think the rigidity of the U.S. policy does not allow for.
But for the families of Griner, Whelan, and dozens of other Americans held overseas, the request to the White House is constant, unwavering, and simple.